Hey everyone, welcome back to Atarion News channel. If you are into 3D art, animation, or anything creative with digital content, then November 18, 2025 might just be one of the most important dates you need to remember this year. That's the day Blender dropped version 5.0. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this is probably the biggest update the software has seen in years. Now, if you're completely new to Blender, let me catch you up real quick. Blender is a completely free and open source 3D creation suite. We're talking modeling, sculpting, animation, rendering, video editing, compositing, and more. It's the kind of software that Hollywood studios use, yet it costs you absolutely nothing. And with version 5.0, it just became exponentially more powerful. So, what makes this release so special? Well, let's start with something that affects literally everything you see on the screen. Blender 5.0 completely rebuilt how it handles colors from the ground up. This might sound boring at first, but trust me, this is massive. The new color management pipeline now natively supports HDR and wide gamut color spaces. What does that mean in plain English? It means you can now work with colors that are brighter, more vivid, and more accurate than ever before. If you've ever watched an HDR movie on a modern TV and noticed how the highlights almost seem to glow, or how colors pop in ways that feel almost surreal, that's what we are talking about. The update includes support for industry standard color workflows like ACES 1.3 and 2.0. These are the same color standards used in major film productions. You also get support for Rec 2100, which is the broadest standard for HDR video. If you are a content creator making videos for YouTube or working on any kind of video project, being able to export true HDR content is going to future proof your work in ways that weren't possible before. Now let's talk about what might be the most revolutionary feature in this entire release: volume grids in geometry nodes. If you're not familiar with geometry nodes, think of them as a visual programming system where you can create procedural effects and models by connecting nodes together instead of manually modeling everything. It's incredibly powerful, and with version 5.0, it just got supercharged. The new volume grid system brings 27 new nodes that let you work with volumetric data in ways that were previously only possible in specialized simulation software. You can now create fluid simulations, work with something called SDF modeling, which stands for signed distant fields, and visualize scientific volumetric data all within geometry nodes. The practical applications here are mind blowing. Imagine being able to convert a mesh into a volume, perform Boolean operations on it like cutting shapes out of clouds of smoke, and then applying filters to create organic, flowing forms. This opens up entirely new workflows for motion graphic artists, VFX artists, and anyone who wants to create abstract or organic shapes. Speaking of new workflows, Blender 5.0 introduces 6 brand new modifiers, and they are all built on top of geometry nodes. The first is the array modifier, which has been completely reimagined. You can now distribute objects along lines, circles, curves, or use custom transforms with full support for randomization. Then there's scatter on surface, which does exactly what it sounds like. It lets you scatter instances of objects across a surface with precise control over density. The instance on elements modifier gives you even more control by letting you place instances on specific points, edges, faces, or even face corners. There's also a randomize instances modifier that adds variations to anything you instance. A curve to tube modifier that creates perfect cylindrical meshes from curves with proper UV mapping, and a geometry input modifier that lets you copy the final geometry from one object directly into another object's modifier stack. If that sounds technical, just think of it this way: these modifiers give you more power to create complex scenes with less manual work. For anyone interested in rendering, Cycles got some serious love in this update. The rendering engine now uses a new unbiased null scattering volume rendering algorithm as the default. What this means is that when you have overlapping volumes like smoke passing through fog, you won't get those blocky artifacts anymore. Everything looks smoother and more realistic. There's also a more accurate subsurface scattering algorithm for simulating how light penetrates and scatters beneath surfaces like skin or wax. This removes those weird darkening artifacts that could show up in the previous versions. One feature that's going to excite anyone working with materials is the addition of thin film iridescence support in the metallics shader. You know that rainbow shimmer you see on soap bubbles or oil slicks? That's thin film interference, and now you can recreate that effect accurately in Blender. The sky texture node also got upgraded with support for multiple scattering, making skies look more realistic, especially during sunrise and sunset. Video editors are going to appreciate the new compositive modifier integration in the video sequencer. Previously, if you wanted to apply compositing effects to your video strips, you'd have to switch back and forth between the sequencer and the compositor. Now you can apply entire compositing node trees directly into the video sequencer without ever leaving that workspace. Strip properties have also been reorganized into a dedicated strip tab in the properties editor, making everything more intuitive and accessible. The interface got some thoughtful improvements too. UV editing, which is the process of unwrapping 3D models so you can paint textures on them, has been completely overhauled. The UV sync feature, which keeps your 3D selection and UV selection in sync, had been broken in various ways for years. It's now fixed and enabled by default, making the UV editing process much less frustrating for beginners. There's also a new storyboarding template specifically designed for people who want to use Blender for pre-visualization and storytelling. Animation editors now have a dedicated playback controls region, and the maximum length for naming anything in Blender has been increased from 63 bytes to 255 bytes. That might seem trivial, but if you ever worked on a complex project with hundreds of objects and materials, having more descriptive names is a lifesaver. Here's something that power users will appreciate. The blend file format itself has been updated to support blocks larger than 2 gigabytes. What this means is you can now fix work with models that have hundreds of millions of vertices without hitting file format limitations. This is huge for anyone working with photogrammetry, high resolution scans, or extremely detailed sculpts. Now, there are some breaking changes you should be aware of. If you're on Mac, you need to know that Intel Mac support has been completely removed. You'll need an Apple Silicon chip to run Blender 5.0 on macOS. For PC users with older NVIDIA cards, the minimum CUDA compute capability has been raised to SM_50, which roughly corresponds to the GeForce 900 series. If your card is older than that, you won't be able to use GPU rendering in cycles anymore. There's also a new default. File compression is now turned on by default when you save blend files. This reduces file sizes significantly, but if for some reason you need uncompressed files, you can change this in the preferences. The Blender extensions platform continues to grow, and there are now over 700 free add-ons and themes available. This community-driven ecosystem makes Blender even more powerful because you can customize it to fit your exact workflow. What really blows my mind about all this is that Blender remains completely free. This update has been made possible by over 7,900 individual contributors and 41 organizations supporting the Blender Development Fund. The fact that software this powerful with this level of professional capability is available to anyone with a computer is remarkable. This release included 588 bug fixes on top of all these new features, showing just how much polish and care went into making this a stable production ready release. If you're a beginner, just getting started with 3D Blender 5.0 is an incredible entry point. The new modifiers make complex tasks more approachable. The improved interface reduces frustration, and the sheer amount of learning resources available for Blender means you're never alone in your learning journey. For professionals, the HDR and ACE support, the volumetric capabilities in geometry nodes, and the rendering improvements in cycles represent genuine workflow enhancements that can save time and improve quality. The source code for Blender is available under a GPLv3 license, which means it's not just free to use but also free to modify and distribute. This open source nature is what allows Blender to evolve so rapidly and why it has such a passionate community behind it. Whether you're interested in game development, architectural visualization, motion graphics, VFX, product rendering, or just exploring 3D art as a hobby, Blender 5.0 gives you professional grade tools without asking for a subscription or a massive upfront investment. All you need is a willingness to learn, and with version 5.0, the possibilities are more expansive than ever. You might as well go and check the Dropbox down below for a step by step installation and setup guide. That's going to wrap up our deep dive into Blender 5.0. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe to Atarion News channel for more coverage on the latest in creative software and technology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.